That's a beautiful song that is liked by everyone from all the racial lines, I tell you, Ngalagata, as we continue to celebrate Mendoza's life here on Morning Live, and we'll be doing that during this 3 hours here on Morning Live. So make sure that you do stay tuned, because we'll be speaking to everyone who knew Mendoza, everyone who celebrated with him, especially last week during the SABC Thank You concert. So we'll be, paying tribute specifically, as well as celebrating his life here on Morning Live. So I know you'll be wondering what's happening here, studio. Where's Halang this morning? We continue to celebrate spring, as you can see on your screen right now, and courtesy of Garden Master, this is how our studio will look for this whole week. We know that it's the middle of spring now. Ubonakadi Palesa with another Palesa here on studio. Well, in an era where internet is the lifeblood of existence, data remains an expensive luxury for most African countries, including South Africa, of course. The discussion is not new, but it recently came under the spotlight, and that's thanks to social media, specifically Twitter. South African cell phone networks have come under fire on social media for their unreasonably high data prices. But to make sense of this, we're joined now by Andile Masuku from AfricanTechnoRoundup.com. He is the technical producer. Andile Sawubona, good morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming through this morning. First things first, who actually determines the prices of data? Is there perhaps a regulatory body?
Certainly. In South Africa, it would be ICASA. I'd like to think also that the markets play a certain role in terms of supply and demand. Despite popular sentiment to the contrary, mobile telcos are not in any position to determine, without regulation, what they ought to charge for data.
All right. So while we understand its business, why do prices vary so much from the different service providers?
Now, I have it under good authority, having spoken to higher-ups at places like Convergence Partners and CCOM, that the broadband wholesale prices have come down significantly over the last few years. But what you have to realize about mobile telco specifically, because there are a number of different kinds of providers that bring us broadband. So there's the fiber players, you certainly have the fixed line players who bring us ADSL and other services like that. What's unique about the mobile telcos is that they've invested over decades billions of rands, literally, of infrastructure, which they are continuing to try and sweat in order to make a return on investment for their investors. And so, unlike certain players that have come to the market more recently with newer and cheaper technologies that allow us to bring broadband, to enjoy broadband at cheaper prices, the mobile telcos are stuck with infrastructure that they still have to glean a value from. And to a varying degree, the different mobile telcos will be in a position to either bring it at a higher cost or a lower cost. Think of it this way. The city of Joburg would love to give us all free water, wouldn't they? But there's infrastructure that's required to be maintained in order to bring the water to our homes. And as much as they have an obligation to bring us the water, they have to cover their costs and make sure that we're paying at least for the infrastructure and its upkeep. So mobile telephony is similar in that respect.
Yeah, but would you really say that data prices are quite high in South Africa? I mean, we've seen last week during the hashtag Data Must Fall movement on Twitter that people were even comparing South Africa to other African countries. I
think some of those comparisons are ill-informed, simply because you're comparing pears and apples and oranges. Really, the macroeconomic fundamentals of a country, say like Nigeria versus South Africa, is so vastly different. The demographics are different. Even though we have slightly higher penetration numbers in South Africa, still, I mean, it's only 3 out of 10 South Africans that actually own a smartphone. The vast majority of South Africans either still have feature phones or don't have a phone at all. And so, and you compare those kind of numbers with South Korea, which leads the world with 9 out of 10 people owning a smartphone. Just from a volume of use alone, you can see that the case for cheaper prices in a place like, or lower prices in a place like South Africa is not really where it should be. Now, granted, there's a lot said about internet penetration and the penetration of smartphone use in general in the country, but I have to tell you that Africa is not there yet. Certainly South Africa is not. And comparing it to our neighboring countries, which especially Nigeria, which has 3-4 times the size of South Africa, just from a volume of use alone, it's not comparing apples with apples.
Yeah, but I wanted us to compare South Africa with Kenya, because someone was actually saying that an amount that you use for 1 gigabyte in Kenya, it's far cheaper than what we get here in South Africa, and yet it's the same company that provides such.
I would hazard that the infrastructure invested in Kenya, the mobile infrastructure in Kenya, does not rival South Africa's in any shape or form. So if you think of it again with the analogy I drew with the pipeline, it's like comparing a tiny town with a major city in terms of the infrastructure required to deliver the service. And so you should expect that a country like South Africa will, at least mobile telcos in a country like South Africa should have to recoup far more in terms of what they've invested. Now, I'm not sitting here as an apologist for the mobile telcos by any means. You'll know if you follow our show, us on the AfricanTechRoundup.com, that we're the first to say if we even smell a rat at all. But I think what people need to realize is that they suspect that consumers are being exploited in any way. Taking it to the door of the mobile telcos is probably not the right thing. We need to start asking questions of the regulators, because they're the ones who definitely determine who and what can charge what. But
someone listening to the conversation this morning, Andile, would say this guy sounds like an apologist. Tell us more. Is there perhaps a will from these network services to actually bring down the cost of data? Is there a will?
Simple answer to that question is no. Let's remember that we're not talking about public enterprises here. These are.
But why is it so? Why is there no will?
Well, simply because they're businesses. They exist for the sole purpose of delivering value to investors, shareholders, and others, stakeholders that are invested in these companies. They've looked at African markets, decades ago. A bunch of investors would have looked at a market like South Africa and said, you know what, we'll sink a couple of billion into this country, and we can guarantee shareholders who come in with us a certain return on investment. And now the mobile telcos are actually being hardest hit by the disruptive technologies that are coming online, things like over-the-top services like WhatsApp and Viber and others, who are now using new technologies, harnessing infrastructure that they actually never paid for to deliver services to us at prices we've never seen before, unprecedentedly low prices, and we're huge fans of this. But it does have to put pressure, it does invariably put pressure on the boardrooms of places like MTN and Vodacom.
But could the pattern perhaps change this week? We do know that Parliament will be looking into this issue this week. I mean, with the hashtag data must fall as well, I think they've given the service providers how many days? 30 days to actually change the data prices. Yeah. Could we see any change perhaps in this regard?
Now, let's speak specifically to the hashtag. I think some of the people backing it have commercial interests that that are backed by a desire to see data prices lower, perhaps easier access to media, cheaper access to media. You'd like to see university students consume online radio, for example, a lot
which
more.
Might help, eh?
Which it would certainly help an online radio.
So are you saying that is a dream? That might not come true.
I'm being a pragmatist in this scenario where we don't want to cut off our nose and spite our face. Mobile telcos deliver significant value in terms of the infrastructure that allow us to enjoy connectivity to the extent to which we do today. We have to take a cooperative stance with them and not a combative stance with them, because they have sunk a lot of resources that the public sector was not in any position to deliver, not just from an investment point of view, but from a know-how point of view. And so to take a combative stance is really just a disservice to consumers as a whole. I do expect that over time, though, as the mobile telcos figure out, evolve their business models, they'll definitely find a way to bring on board technologies like fiber and subsidize the use of data by
I suppose it's a matter of waiting and see what happens, especially this week in Parliament. But thank you so much for your insight.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. There you have it. That's Andile Masuku. He is the technical producer from AfricanTouchRoundup.com, talking to us about the data and the costs and the possibility of data prices going down. And he says, no, that's a dream that might not come true. Well, Morning Live takes a break.